principal of Srimati P.N. Doshi Women's College. Ma'am, you're on mute.
Yeah, I unmuted.
Yes, ma'am. So very warm welcome to our college.
Thank you so much.
Meet Dr. Asha Menon. She is the principal of Srimati P.N. Doshi Women's College, and Dr. Rekha Randive. She is the head of the Women's Development Cell in our college. Ma'am,
good afternoon, Flavia, ma'am. I hope you remember the interaction long back you had with all of us in the college.
Okay.
Neera Jain was there who brought you to our college.
Who's that?
Neera Jain.
Acha. Okay.
Long back.
Okay. Thank
Early
you.
90s.
Nimisha, you can
Good
start.
afternoon, ma'am. Yes, I'll begin. Good afternoon, one and all. I'm Dr. Nimisha Kamli, coordinator of Srimati Devilaben Mehta, Department of BA Mass Media, and a member of Women's Development Cell in Srimati P.N. Doshi Women's College. Wish you all happy Women's Day. I welcome the SPRJ Kanyashala Trust members, respected Principal Dr. Asha Menon, resource person for today's webinar, eminent personality, Advocate Flavia Agnes ma'am, staff members from SPN Doshi Women's College, dignitaries from the university, principals and staff members from other colleges, research scholars, and my very dear students, for the 8th webinar of the series on Indian feminism through the ages on the topic Women Rights and Legal Advocacy in India, by eminent resource person and social reformer, Advocate Flavia Agnes. This webinar will be followed by the valedictory session of the whole series. As stated by the popular Indian literary figure, Ms. Shashi Deshpande, self-revelation is a cruel process. The real picture, the real you never emerges. Looking for it is as bewildering as trying to know how you really look. 10 different mirrors show you 10 different faces. Really, exploration of the real self is an interesting journey. A series of webinars on the Indian feminism through the ages was an attempt of exploration of different aspects and spheres of Indian feminism. Society has gone through dynamic political, social, and economic phases over the period of time. Through this series of webinars on the Indian feminism through the ages, we have made an attempt to understand these dynamic phases which shaped lives of women from different parts of India. Now I request our dynamic principal, Dr. Asha Menon ma'am, to offer the welcome address. Over to you, Asha ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nimisha. Good afternoon, everyone, and wishing everyone a very happy International Women's Day. I'm happy to welcome everyone to the national webinar on women's rights and legal advocacy in India, organized by Activism and Women's Development Cell of Srimati P.N. Doshi Women's College, Mumbai, which is affiliated to SNDT Women's University, Mumbai. This webinar is the last in the series of the webinar on Indian feminism through the ages. Legal awareness, I would say, is imperative to safeguard the rights of women and promote women's empowerment. Women should acquaint themselves with their legal rights and provisions of various women-related laws. This is the reason we have with us today a very eminent legal scholar and women's rights lawyer, Advocate Agnes, who will shed light on the various women-related laws. I would like to welcome Ms. Flavia Agnes to this webinar, who, with her immense knowledge and grassroots level experience in the field, will help us understand the legalities of the laws related to women. I would also like to welcome all the participants for this webinar who have joined us in large numbers. I congratulate Dr. Rekha Randive and her team for organizing this webinar so effortlessly. Wishing the webinar the very best. Thank you. Over to Nimisha.
Thank you, ma'am, for your always inspiring words. Truly, notwithstanding the efforts to improve the status of women in the society, with the provision of higher education, voting rights, emergence of digitization, and for that matter, conquering the world, still many of our sisters, daughters, and mothers need to be aware of their fundamental rights. let us know more about women's rights and legal advocacy in India from the eminent resource person. But before that, I request Dr. Shobha Bharat ma'am to give introduction of the resource person for today's webinar. Over to you, Shobha ma'am.
Thank you very much, Nimisha ma'am. It is my proud privilege to introduce Miss Flavia Agnes, the legal scholar and women's rights lawyers with nearly 40 decades of experience. She is a pioneer in women's movement in India, and she has worked consistently on the issues of gender and law reforms. A prolific writer, she has provided incisive analysis of many social trends and legal reforms, including domestic violence, minority law reforms, feminist jurisprudence, secularism, and human rights. Significant among many of her publications are Law and Gender Inequality, The Politics of Personal Laws in India, Women and Law, where she has been a co-editor, Family Law, which is in two volumes, a prescribed textbook for law students, and Negotiating Spaces, where again she has been a co-editor, Publishers, OUP in India. Her inspirational autobiographical essay, My Story, Our Story of Rebuilding Broken Lives, is an important marker of women's movement. Her organization, Majlis, which was set up in 1991, provides legal advocacy and litigation support to women and children from the marginalized communities and conducts training to stakeholders, including the police and the judiciary. The organization is also engaged in policy level interventions and public interest litigation in order to help women access justice. In 2011, Majlis started Rahat to provide socio-legal support to the survivors of sexual violence. Today, the organization has reached out to 2,000 victims of sexual abuse, most of whom are children in dire need of support, and turning victims into survivors is the organization's motto. Thank you so much, ma'am, for being amongst us here to talk about your experiences and provide insights into laws and legal rights for women in India. A warm welcome once again. Over to you, Nimisha.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Really, let us begin with the session now, which is the most awaited session, and everyone is looking forward to listen to the session. So I request the resource person to please begin with the session. Over to you, Flavia, ma'am.
Thank you so much. It's indeed a great pleasure to be amongst you today. I wish a very happy Women's Day to each of you. And I hope women will achieve greater equality in society in the years to come. It's been a long journey for me, starting with the 1980 Women's Day, which was celebrated as Anti-Rape Law Day. I just want to mention here that for Indian women, it has been a consistent struggle. It's been a consistent struggle constantly to deal with violence against women. And a lot of law reform has evolved around dealing with violence against women. So 1980 was the year when, which was marked as the Anti-Rape Law Day. Now, there's a history to this, that there was a rape case in Maharashtra, in the Gadchiroli district, where a young girl, a 16-year-old tribal girl, was raped by two men in police station. So let me start with that, because that's the beginning for many of us. So she was a maidservant, illiterate, poor, orphan, everything possible. The young boy in that house where she worked had eloped with her. And her brother filed a complaint, because of which she was brought to the police station. Now, there were a few people waiting for her outside the police station, her brother, her boyfriend, etc. It was dark. And when she came out, she didn't come out for a long time. So she was called. They called out to her, and one policeman came out and said she had been raped. She has left. But since they were waiting, they knew she had not left. So they went round to the back gate and they started calling out her name. Mathura, Mathura. She came out and she was in a disabled state. Her clothes were torn, her hair was loose. She was very upset and she said, "These policemen have raped me." And that was a historic moment where the group believed her and filed a case, insisted that a case should be filed against that same police station in which the policemen were stationed. Initially, there was a resentment, the group became violent, and then they threatened to burn down the police station, and finally a case was filed. It went on trial, and the trial court gave a verdict not guilty for two reasons. One, there were no marks of injury on her body, and because of which the court assumed that she had consented. And secondly, she was not a woman of good character because she had eloped with that boy. And hence,
Bye.
she's not reliable.
जल्दी आओ
Hello?
मैं
So-
अकेले रहती ना
Hello? Is there disturbance?
She's muted, ma'am. She's muted.
Yeah, okay. So then this, because of the public pressure in this case, way back in 72 I'm talking about, the state filed an appeal. The matter went to High Court, to the Nagpur bench of the Bombay High Court. And the High Court gave a verdict, which is according to me very important, where the High Court held a quiet acquiescence is not consent. Consent has to be voluntary. Somebody out of fear does not resist, does not mean that she consented. And they convicted the policeman. Policeman went on appeal to the Supreme Court, and this verdict came in 1978. But three judges of the Supreme Court held that the policemen were not guilty, that sexual intercourse was with consent. And they upheld the Sessions Court verdict, which had said that Mathura is a liar. So this judgment, so two things got established, that there have to be injury in order to prove rape. And the woman's character and conduct is very important, that she, if she's not a woman of good character, then she cannot be raped. So this judgment, 4 law professors wrote a letter to the Chief Justice of India against this judgment and asked for a review. And they said, if this judgment is allowed in the statute books, the hopes of thousands of Mathuras in the country will be lost. There'll absolutely be no better victim than Mathura, who was 16 years old, tribal, orphan, poor, illiterate, and who had filed the case immediately. So, when this letter, they wrote not just to the Chief Justice, but they made it an open letter and they published it in the newspapers. Why I'm telling you this story is that many of us think we're academicians, we're not activists, and we only teach what else can we do. But I want to say here that how activism and academics is not very different. One constantly influences the other, and one makes the other much more rigorous. So a beginning of the anti-rape campaign starts with these 4 law professors, 2 of them male and 2 were female, and initiated by the most renowned law professor, Professor Upendra Bakshi, who still continues to be an activist, keeps writing in the newspapers, etc. So this letter came out, which led to the women's movement in India, according to me. there were lots of groups, small groups that emerged in different cities. And a lot of women felt if this Supreme Court, 3 judges of the Supreme Court can think like this about Mathura, what do they think about us? What safety is there for us? What safety is there for our children? So there was a campaign. When women's groups approached the Chief Justice said that, what can I do? It's a law that is there and we are only interpreting the law. So your struggle has to be for law change. So this led to the entire campaign again to revise the rape laws, to amend the existing rape laws, which had remained unchanged since the IPC started in 1860. So this, according to me, is the history. In 1980, for the first time, International Women's Day was celebrated by all these small groups across the country. But there was not much publicity in those days. The groups were very small. It was not a major demonstration, but it made an impact. So this anti-rape law day marked on March 8th, International Women's Day, for us was a major milestone. And this campaign for revising amending the rape law ended in 1983, where the rape law was actually amended. So for the Indian women's movement, this violence against women, and particularly rape, and at the time dowry death, were very important issues around which the movement galvanized itself. And constantly, every issue taken up by the movement ended in law reform. I had written about it in an article that got published in EPW, I think in 1994, where I analyzed the whole decade, 1980 to 89. How many new laws came, how many laws got reformed, each with a similar kind of focus of stringent punishment. Even today, we are on the same plan of stringent punishment. So, 1983 law was amended. Minimum punishment of 7 years was declared for rape, ordinary rape, 10 years for aggravated rape. Aggravated rape means multiple injuries or child under 12, a pregnant woman, gang rape, and rape in custodial situations. Custodial situations means when a woman or child is in the state custody, whether it is in a shelter home, whether it is prison, whether it is government hospital, whether it is mental asylum or tribal shelter homes, various kinds of things. So there's all under trials. All these are considered as custodial situation. And when a rape happens in these situations, it is called aggravated rape. A new offense was also declared that even with consent, you cannot have sex with someone in your custody. For instance, a doctor cannot have sex with his patient, even if it is with consent. Or a jailer cannot have sex, warden cannot have sex with somebody under his care. So this was a new offense that came about. But if you see in the intervening years, not much change on the ground. Why not much change in the ground? Because there is always a suspicion that women are telling lies. The woman's character and conduct becomes very important in a rape trial. The number of cases reported were going up every year. And the conviction rate was extremely low. So you had a situation where more people were recording the crime of rape, but there was, most of them were getting acquitted, and hence this notion came that women are always telling lies. This is so engraved in our mind that it is very difficult, firstly, to report. Second is to convict. And all the cases where conviction doesn't happen for various other reasons are termed as false cases. So we are constantly under this premise of having proved that rape is not, the woman is not a liar, the child is not a liar. So this is our major challenge. It has been in the intervening years. And but there are many negative cases that happened in the intervening case. Like there was a Bauri Devi case which brought in the Vishaka guidelines. She was a satin. She was raped while doing her work. She was a government contract worker, and she filed a case against the 4 men, upper caste men, for gang raped her. But the Jaipur Session Court held that because she is a lower class woman, how can the upper class man touch her? And how can a 60-year-old man open his pants in front of another 70-year-old man? Such things don't happen in India. And they just seem to be living in a totally different world, because most rape cases happen against Dalit women by upper caste. But yet he thought that since she's untouchable, they wouldn't touch her, which is total falsity, and which just shows how distant the judge is from the reality of life. So we all know that all these things were happening, but for us, the moment of awakening was the Delhi gang rape in 2012 that happened, which is popularly known as the Nirbhaya case, where this 23-year-old girl traveling in a bus along with her male friend was brutally raped and murdered. And that's when there was a clamor for death penalty, and there was a need for law reform. So the government set up the Burma Committee, and the Burma Committee brought out its report, and we got the reform in rape law again in 2013, which is called a Criminal Amendment Act. So here we have a whole new definition of rape. But before that, I must mention here that from like 1983 to 2013, there were many issues that surfaced. Particularly of importance is the child sexual abuse. Now, in child sexual abuse happens in many cases, which is ignored. It happens at home by people from your own family. Many of them are by father, raping daughter. Then we have rapes in shelter homes. Then we have rapes happening in the name of sex tourism, where foreigners come, entice small children, and they videotape them in the sexual acts, and use it commercially. So these are called pedophiles. So this offense was not come under any law so far. So we needed all these things.
Advocacy reside at the Rwanda. These Adivasis were dependent on the daily.
Hello, is there some disturbance here?
Ma'am, I have muted the person.
Okay, please ask everyone to mute,
Ma'am,
because
we have put up that message. All the participants are requested to mute themselves, please.
because in the middle it disturbs when the
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
okay. So then, so in 2012, November 14, we got a new law. This is called the Protection of Children from Sexual Assault Act, the POCSO Act of 2012. I'm mentioning this here because it is a very important law, which changed the definition of rape. Because earlier, one had to prove vaginal penetration to prove rape. But under this law, particularly because of the cases of children that were coming up where there was no complete penetration, but insertion of objects into the girl's vagina, there was oral sex, anal sex, a lot of things were happening which were not being punished under the rape law. So this new law redefined the offense into offense of sexual assault and had various categories of sexual abuse, aggravated sexual abuse, penetrative sexual abuse, various kind of things. In every category, there was aggravated offense, etc. So under this, sexual assault constitutes not just veno-vaginal penetration, but a range of offenses about insertion of any objects into the girl's body, or oral sex, anal sex, all of them, and touching or abusing in any manner whatsoever. All these were coming under the POCSO Act today. So it's very important for all of us to understand that it's not just penetrative sex that we're talking about. We're talking about a range of abuses. Sexual assault, sexual abuse, each one is defined. And this is the law that came before the Nirbhaya case. It's redefined entire discourse on sex. The word rape is taken out from here. It's called sexual assault. It is a gender neutral law. And all children under 18 come under this purview, male and female. And both male and female can be also abuses. So this law was to deal with various kinds of abuses that take place at home, by known persons, in shelter homes, in public places, etc. Now here there is also another issue that anyone who is aware, comes to know about a child sexual abuse that's happening, is under the law to report. You cannot say they don't want to report. For instance, a policeman does not record, then he will be punished. If a doctor who knows about a pregnancy of a young girl does not report, then that will be held, he will be held responsible if he does not report. Also, it is very important that there are special courts, special procedures for trial, special procedures for investigation. It's a very comprehensive law that came about. And a child is defined as somebody under 18. So 16-year-old like Mathura, whether she was 16 or 16, all these don't matter now at all. Now, in intervening period, we got two very important amendments. One is prior to 2002, if a woman was of bad character, that could be used in defense of the accused. So that segment, rule of evidence was removed. That was removed, and now you cannot use a woman's past sexual history. Secondly, rape trials will be held in camera. They will not be held in the open. And when rape trials happen, there has to be complete confidentiality. It's not in an open court. It has to be in camera, that is behind closed doors. Also, you cannot report it in the newspapers. You cannot reveal the identity. You cannot use a name even in a judgment. So there is a complete confidentiality is ensured under the law. Just 1 minute. Sorry. So 2013 amendment after the Nirbhaya case that came about incorporated this definition of sexual abuse into the rape law. So today, even for adult women, if there is insertion of objects, any kind of penetration, not just vaginal penetration, all of it come under the rape law. So you don't have to prove penetrative sex. So this has changed the situation. But according to me, we follow up rape cases. Still, the rape trials continue to be very traumatic for the victim. The way she is interrogated in the courts is very humiliating. And rape trials always put the woman in the dock talk about her past sexual history. And all the time make comments about what type of a woman she was and how she could not be raped. And it still shows that it is she and her character which is on trial rather than the accused character and what the accused did to her. So here, it is important that we follow cases very closely, and we have followed up many cases and also written about many of them, what exactly happens in the trial court. And this is in Bombay. You can imagine what happens across the country. Yet, I feel we have come a long way since the 1980s. After the anti-rape campaign of the 1980s, we have moved further and further, but yet as we move further, more challenges come before us, and it's not easy. It's not easy to file a complaint. A lot of people hesitate before filing cases, and what we have in the reported cases is only the tip of the iceberg. It does not show us the entire situation. The next issue I want to take up is the Bauri Devi case, which is very important for us as working women. The Bauri Devi was raped, as I told you, by upper caste men. The trial court acquitted these men on the ground that since she's an untouchable, how could they have touched her? But very important judgment came from the Supreme Court in this case, where she herself did not give justice, but an NGO called Vishaka from Jaipur filed a case in the Supreme Court saying that since she was working for the government has to make every precaution to make the working space safe for women. So with this, we got Justice Verma again, gave this judgment called, which is popularly known as Vishaka judgment, which gave guidelines for women for the workplace security. And he declared that though I am, as a judge, cannot make the law, I am making this law because government has not passed a legislation. And these guidelines will be in operation till a law is enacted. So we all know Shaka guidelines. All our educational institutions had to form committees. All government officers had to formulate these committees. They are called internal complaints committees. So here it is not a criminal provision, but it is only a law to protect the victims, ensure that the workspaces are more conducive for gender equality and for women to work there peacefully. So this internal committee also has to have an NGO representation. So that usually it is a boss or a senior colleague who may violate a woman by touching, by humiliating, by making comments about her, various things, asking for sexual favors, etc. And in the committee, people in the committee may side with him rather than with the victim. So in order to ensure a fair trial for her, it is mandatory to have an NGO member in the committee. And that NGO member must be well-versed with the law and well-versed with the guidelines, and must be sympathetic to the victim, and she will maintain the balance so that the scales are not tilted against her. So this judgment came in 1997, because of which committees were constituted everywhere, all over, in government offices, in private sector, corporates, everywhere. But women in the women who are in the unorganized sector were not protected. So there was a lot of effort, a lot of campaign to bring in a law which will be applicable to the organized as well as unorganized sector. And in 2013, we got the law which is sexual harassment of women at the workplace, for their protection, for their prevention, and for their safety. So this, under this law, even women from unorganized sector are protected. Committees are constituted at the district level under the district collector, as well as, of course, internal complaints committees are there. And not having a committee is an offense, and you can go to High Court and get a committee constituted. So we have, and what we're looking out for here is not rape, not assault, but making the workplace uncomfortable for women so that they're not able to work. They're not able to concentrate. They're not able to perform. So this is a very important legislation that has come about, securing equality at the workplace, securing that women are provided with a space that they're not constantly worried about what's going to happen to them. I do not know how well it works, but at least in principle, we have it there, so that men and women are both aware of the norms that have to be followed, the boundaries that have to be kept, so that a man cannot violate these boundaries and a woman can go and complete. So this is another very important legislation we got. Another major issue that has been with us, continues to be with us, is domestic violence. Violence within the marriage, violence within the home. So here, we had constantly cases of violence when woman was murdered in her husband's home, and we named it into a new offense called dowry death. But there's a presumption that dowry leads to violence, which I do not subscribe to. Because violence anything can be a cause for violence. So we got a law in 1986 that we got a law against dowry in 1984-86. But what I'm talking about is the violence. So in 1986, we got a criminal law amendment which prescribed that a woman, it's called 304B, section 304B, that if a married woman dies an unnatural death within 7 years of a marriage, then it will be presumed that the husband or his family were instrumental for this. So here, the onus of proving the offense is shifted on the husband and his family, that they did not commit the offense. And we got another law in 1983 called 498A, that a woman is harassed for dowry, or she's harassed in such a way that she her life or limb is in danger, or she's been driven to suicide, then there is an offense of 498A being committed. So we have 498A and 304B. These two laws deal with domestic violence. But we know these laws are highly inadequate. The conviction is very low. And we also came to the awareness that violence is not related to dowry. Violence happens in all situations for women. Physical violence, sexual violence, emotional violence, economic violence. Women are constantly going through this. And studies done by UN constantly brought out the factor that in the whole South Asia region, domestic violence against women is very, very high. And India tops this category. Whereas we have made much progress in the category of political participation, economic advancement, education, literacy, etc. Where health and safety of women is concerned, we are regressing. We're regressing very rapidly, in fact. And studies have shown that 30 to 40% of our women, ever married women, have been subjected to domestic violence. So, while criminal law is an option. For many women, it was not an option because they didn't want punishment. They wanted protection. They wanted safety. There was constant threat that they'll be thrown out of the house. The children will be snatched away from them. Maintenance is not provided them. Children are not able to go to school. Children are not being given food. A lot of these issues came for women. And many women used to go to NGOs. They wanted help. Sometimes they resort to counseling, call the husband, etc. But the situation would be the same. And when they're not able to cope, a lot of women were driven to suicide. This became a very major issue for the NGOs, for women who were working on the ground. So there was a campaign that started somewhere in 1990, went on till 2005 for a civil law on domestic violence. So finally, in 2005, we got this very, very important law called Protection of Women Against Domestic Violence Act, where domestic violence is defined very, very broadly. This law applies only to women. A woman can get a protection order against violence. She can get a order of protecting her right to stay in the matrimonial home, that she's not driven out of the home. And she got many other rights like right of maintenance, right of child custody, and right of protection. So these are very important rights, and also this got a lot of mechanism within it. A whole new institution was constructed under it called the protection officer. There's the constant fear that lawyers are expensive, lawyers are exploitative. So how will women approach the courts? So here the law prescribes very simple procedure, very simple forms that have to be filled up and can be filed without a lawyer, through the NGO, through various other sources. But most important is the office of the protection officer. That protection officer is a government employee. The protection officer is not a lawyer. What the protection officer does is fill up these forms and file it in the court. So the case gets started. And the judge is able to pass interim order. So if she is in a danger of being thrown out, judge can pass an injunction restraining the husband or his family members from throwing her out. If her children are being snatched away from her, she can get a protection order for her children. She can get maintenance, etc. And some of these orders you can get expeditiously. The entire proceedings have to be expeditiously carried out and has to be completed in 60 days. Of course, this never happens, but at least there is a pressure, because you have to constantly file it in the High Court that how we have dealt with the cases of domestic violence. And the High Court has to review this so that cases are not languishing. All this, of course, sounds very good on paper. It gives an impression that things have improved a great deal. But of course, our legal structure is not changed. There are constant delays. Very important thing about Domestic Violence Act, the remedies are civil in nature, but they're located in the magistrate court. Magistrate court is the first rung of the court, which is very accessible to women. For instance, in Bombay, we have about 10 magistrate courts, whereas we have only one family. So this protection officers have to go to the magistrate court and file this document, and the judge is supposed to pass an order. You can have a lawyer if you want, but if you can have legal aid if you want. You can approach a legal aid lawyer, or if you can approach a police protection officer. So you don't need to go to the police station, because they say women are scared to go to the police station. Police station gives them no response, etc. So this law tries to deal with this. So we have this protection of women from domestic violence. Unfortunately, about domestic violence, there's a lot of stigma. There's also marital status, marriage gives status and protection despite the domestic violence. Women are afraid of being single. women are afraid of being stigmatized. So even educated women do not talk about domestic violence. They hide their bruises and they continue. Even working women are in similar situation. So I get clients who have been in violent marriages for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. And when I look at them, somebody's been in a violent relationship for 30 years. I think of myself and I tell myself I could have been hurt. If I did not take the challenge and if I did not come out of a domestic violence situation, I would have been in the same rut. Because I had the courage to come out, because I challenged all these structures and made a life for myself away from the situation of domestic violence, that I could advance. I could have a status of my own, have a position of my own, continue my studies, and build a new life for myself, which is there in the book I mentioned, my story, our story of rebuilding broken lives. It was first written in 1984, many years ago, now nearly 40 years. But on the ground level, the situation for women has not changed much. We still have similar situation, or at times even worse situation, despite all the law reform that happened. And the other factors influence us, that rising prices, the property price in Bombay, when you leave, where do you go? The state of shelter homes in Bombay, where it is not a viable option for working women, for middle class women. So unless your family is supporting you, or you have some strong person supporting you, you're not able to break this cycle of violence. And you continue to be in the same situation. So what I'm trying to say is that while law reform has happened, women's groups are campaigning every March 8th, year after year, for securing better rights of women. Unless all women act on this and want to change their lives, the law is of no use. And even when you approach the court, it's not always you get justice. The court structure continues to be anti-women, while we have one level, all progressive laws. The laws are placed in the courts with the same patriarchal values. And of course, we have shortage of judges, overcrowded courtrooms, long delays. So I know you're going to ask this on the questions, that what changes have come. All these are reality. Though efforts are made to improve this, but you actually cannot see the improvement on the ground. The next law I want to talk about, which is also very important for us as middle class women, is that somewhere in the 80s, the issue of sex-selective abortions came up. Our male preference for a male child was so much that we were ready to find out the sex of the child. And if it is found to be female, we would do an abortion. In 1980s, when we started this campaign, there used to be advertisements on the train, etc., that spend 5,000 today rather than spend 5 lakhs later. That means with 5,000 you can do an abortion, sex-selective abortion, rather than spending 5 lakhs for a dowry. And openly this is to be advertised. Even hospitals like Harkishan Hospital, where you wouldn't give even an egg because they're vegetarian, would publicize these killing of female fetuses as a humanitarian service to the society. So we were going towards a society of all males, where women were treated with contempt. Having a daughter, a female child, was considered dangerous, a burden on the family. She may get raped. Nobody will marry her after that, or you have to give a high amount for dowry. Rather than dealing with all these social issues, you thought the medical technology will solve your problem by terminating the female fetus, by terminating or killing their female fetus. Understand? So in the 80s and 90s, there was very big campaign around it. So we got a law in 1988 in Maharashtra. Prevention of sex selective abortion. But it was only in Maharashtra. But they were in Punjab, many other places these things were happening. So finally in 1994, we got a law, national law, a prevention of sex selective abortions. And in 2002, it was amended that even pre-conception, there were a lot of people advertising that if you do this, you will get a male child, you will conceive a male child. So not killing any fetus, but you are promoting a male, getting a male child. Male preference you're promoting. So it's called PCPNDT Act now. Prevention of diagnostic technology for the sex selective, for finding out the sex. So this methodology had come to diagnose female abnormalities. But it was being used in India maximum to find out the sex of the child. So it was not only a law that came, there were many arrests of doctors and these sonography, capture of sonography machines where these tests were being done. And the matter was in Supreme Court, came up again and again and again. And finally, now today, if you see, if you go to a diagnosis center, you'll always find posters there. We do not do sex selective tests. We do not do pregnancy tests to find out the test of sex of the female. That is become very important because that was the only way you could control it, because the whole practice was going, nobody was bothered about the law. And it is done by educated people. It is done by technicians. It is done by doctors. It is promoted by these people. So when we started the campaign, it was the sex could be selected in the second trimester. So the argument was that it is dangerous for the woman's life. But then with the sonography machines, you could test in the first trimester. So the argument was then, now what's the problem? Or it could be now detected before the conception if you have a pre-conception method through which you can get a male child. This is what is believed. I do not know to what extent this is true. But the PCPNDT Act, for the short form of this PCPNDT Act, said that it affects demography. The number of women in a country is going down. You know, all countries have more females than men. Only in the South Asia region, we have less women per 1,000 years. And this was constantly going down decade after decade till 1990. And that is why it became very, very important to ensure that females have a chance of survival. Females are denied this chance of survival even before they are born. And this is the state of affairs. So this law came to protect the children, or rather fetus, so that our demography improves. Many of you would have heard about it. So this is the PCPNDT Act. Then we had other laws like anti-sati law. There are lots of laws that have come about. But one important factor I want to mention here is that this whole law reform, every issue taken up has ended in the law reform. And also there have been setbacks in many areas, particularly in the labor participation, within the labor laws. A lot of women are out of the organized sector today. They are pushed into unorganized sector. But there's some laws that have come to protect the rights of women in the unorganized sector as well. Protecting the workspaces, etc. I am not aware how well they function and what is the situation on the ground, because I don't work in that area. But that's a very important fact. Then we have various personal laws. And improvements have come to various piecemeal legislations. For instance, in 2005, the Hindu women became equal property holders in the ancestral property. While we got under the Hindu Succession Act in 1955, women could get property of their father in the self-owned property. But the Hindu undivided family property, only males could inherit. A major breakthrough we got in 2005 this law, where women were made as co-partners. They could even be the karta of the family. But even here, while the law is there, most women are made to sign a document or affidavit at the time of their marriage that they are being given dowry, so they will not claim property rights. And very few women actually fight for their rights against their native family. It is easier to fight for rights in the matrimonial home, but very, very difficult to fight for rights in the native home. Then, again, an issue came up here that for a woman to get a right, should the man, the property owner, be alive when this law came? Or even if he's not alive, the woman would still have a right to the property. This was very, very important. And the Supreme Court clarified in 2018 that he doesn't have to be alive. A woman has inherent right today to the parental property, and she cannot be denied. She or her heirs cannot be denied this right to ancestral property. So this important legislation has come about, and very important judgments have come securing the rights of the Hindu women. Yet the discriminated practice of the Hindu undivided family, which provides tax exemption only to Hindu women, has not been taken out, because they say it is very important, otherwise land will get fragmented. To preserve the undivided family property concept under Hindu law is very important. Similarly, there have been discriminations against minority women, Muslim women, Christian women, etc. So Christian women did not have a right to divorce on the ground of cruelty. They did not have a right of mutual consent divorce. And they waged a campaign right from 1960 onwards for a very, very long time, saying that cruel Christian women should be entitled to a ground similar to other women, like cruelty, desertion, adultery, etc. Whereas Christian women had to prove two grounds, adultery and something else. Even in my own case, this was the situation, so I did not get a divorce because it was very difficult. If there was cruelty alone, that was not sufficient. And there was also no right for mutual consent. They are the only community which would deny the right of divorce in a civilized way to mutual consent. Finally, in 2002, the Christian law was amended to very sustained efforts after a very, very long time. And today, Christian women have a right of mutual consent divorce. Christian couples have a right of mutual consent divorce, as well as cruelty has become an independent ground, so that women can get divorced on the ground of cruelty. And there was also a ceiling that you could not get a maintenance more than 1/5 of the husband's salary. You could not be awarded. So that concept is also gone. And today, maintenance is considered to be around 1/3 of the husband's salary and not 1/5 for all women. So these are important developments in the Christian law. Under the Muslim law, very important issue of triple talaq created a lot of controversy. There was a case in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court gave its verdict that triple talaq is not valid. But because of the cases continuing thereafter, finally a law has been enacted which criminalizes triple talaq. So if a husband pronounces arbitrary triple talaq, not only that talaq is not valid and the woman has all her rights, but also she has a criminal remedy. She can get her husband arrested. I'm not in support of this law because if desertion among Hindus is not punished, why are we punishing talaq under Muslim law? This is a discriminatory practice, but that law is there and women can use this. I do not know to what extent women are using it, but it's there. And it is supposed to be beneficial to women. But in 1986, we got another law, which according to me is very, very beneficial to women, which is not talked about much. This is called the Muslim Women Rights Upon Divorce Act. So under this law, even when there is a divorce, a woman is not deprived of her rights. She is entitled to fair and reasonable settlement upon divorce. And supposing a husband pronounces talaq, the woman can accept the talaq and ask for her rights under this law. She can ask for child custody also. She can ask for maintenance, a settlement, a lump sum settlement. And we have done several cases under this law as well as under domestic violence law together. So that once we get interim maintenance and then we ask for a lump sum settlement. So because of the pressure of having to pay maintenance under Domestic Violence Act, the husbands come around and agree to settle the matter. So this is another way that we have tried to protect the rights of Muslim women. One can go on and on for the law reform, then you can have the entire labor law into which changes have been made. You have various other laws. We have the constitutional amendment, which gave reservation for women in various local bodies. So in municipal elections, in Panchayati Raj, all of them, 1993 amendment was there to the constitution. And that has brought in a lot of progress for women. A lot of women are now politically participating. So if you see the international statistics of women's development, you can see our political participation has increased a great deal. But it's not perfect. We're still a long way to go, but it is better. But in our higher positions in the legal institutions, in the government jobs at higher category, we don't see the results. Our judges, in fact, the proportion of women is dismal. Our legislature, the representation of women is dismal. We have very few women legislators at the state or central level. We have very few women judges in the High Court and the Supreme Court. Slowly it is improving, but we have still a long way to go. There's much greater participation at the district court as well as in the magistrate court. A lot of women are joining judiciary, appearing for exams, getting selected. So you have very young women, after their law graduation, they can apply for it. They can answer the papers, they can apply to be judicial officers, and they then are given training. So here slowly you can see the equations change. So I think I've spoken for a long time. In fact, I've utilized all the time that is given to me. So if there are questions now, I will address them. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. We shall move forward to the question answer sessions now.
Okay, thank you.
And thank you, ma'am, for such an informative and inspiring session on such a broad and challenging topic. And your story, your journey and hardships are truly remarkable, and it is inspiring us to write our stories. So I request everyone to pose the questions, and we will be having another session, which is validity session. So before that, we will take up the questions quickly if there are any questions. So I request Dr. Veena Shetty to please coordinate for the questions. Dr.
Thank you,
Veena
Nimisha.
Shetty. Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Dr. Veena Shetty, head of the department from Management Studies. Women's rights are human rights. These rights includes the rights to live free from violence and discrimination to enjoy equality in the society. Ma'am, your session is really enlightening us about various laws, acts of women's rights, etc. You have also discussed various cases. That the most enlightening case, that is a Nirbhaya case, which still we are aware about that. Here I request all the participants, if any questions, please unmute yourself and you can ask. Hello.
Veena, Mr. Brijesh Kumar, I think, has raised his hand to ask the question. Yes, Mr. Brijesh.
Yes,
Yeah,
Brijesh
thank you,
Kumar.
ma'am.
Yeah.
First, thank you very much for the. It is a wonderful session, and myself Brijesh Kumar, and I am from SIS College. Ma'am, my question is especially regarding stealthing. How do you handle the cases of stealthing? As far as my studies is concerned, I have studied in California. One of the politician struggled hard. I mean, struggled a lot to ban these cases like stealthing. And even in New Zealand on the 28th of April 2021, this kind of stealthing has been banned. But what is the status in India and how these kind of cases is being handled? So this is my question. Thank you very much.
I'm not, I don't get the meaning of what you're asking. What is the meaning of that word?
Ma'am, the meaning of the stealthing is non-removal removal of condom during the time of sex. That means especially, yeah. Did you get that, or you want me to elaborate more on this?
Elaborate more. Yeah, I didn't get it.
You didn't get?
No.
Okay. So, ma'am, stealthing means removal of condom during the time of sexual partners. So what happens here? Sometime even at the time of sexes, without the informing the other partner, the persons damage the condom or remove the condom. And what happened here? Some time of diseases they get to the other partner. So this is something which happened at the time of sexes.
We are a long way away from this concept. We don't have any cases of this sort coming up. We don't even have many cases of date rape, for instance. There are very few cases that are coming up of date rape. That you've gone out with somebody and then the person, you have invited that person to your home, but you're not consented to sex. And then the man forces and there's sex happening. But even such cases, we don't have conviction. There are 2 or 3 such cases that have come up in Bombay also, but there was no conviction. So we have not gone to such an extent to the removal of the condom during the sexual act, which leads to damaging the higher health, leading to pregnancy, various other efforts. I'm aware that in other countries there is a law regarding this, and there is a provision for protecting the women even in such cases, but we don't have such. We don't have such law. Also, we don't have such cases. We are very far away from the rape law is far away from such incidents. We're still talking about violence. We're still talking about abuse. We're still talking about what happens, senior rapes, family rapes. Family rapes are just becoming recognized today. So our law is not recognized. I mean, we are not reached the state for even asking for this.
Hello. Thank you, ma'am, for the answer. Is there anyone else who would like to ask the question? I request the participants.
I've already posted a question in the chat box, Veena. Would you like to ask that question to ma'am?
Yeah, there are some questions from YouTube also. I can take some questions from the YouTube. Ma'am, how to spread awareness easily about the women's rights in society?
I think our government is doing a lot. There's certain advertisements, state-wise, central, etc., regarding various laws, but not enough. And people watch this particularly about sex-selective abortions, about domestic violence. There are some videos and some advertisements, etc. But at the community level, at the grassroots level, they don't reach the message. And there continues to be discrimination, there continues to be exploitation. One issue I did not address, and during lack of time, is sex trafficking. A lot of minors are either kidnapped or sold into sex work and are transported to different cities or sent abroad. So this is a very important concern. There are laws to prevent human trafficking, there are laws to prevent sex work from happening, etc. So there are 2 points here. One is that if you are entered a profession with consent, then you need your human rights to be recognized. And sex workers are human beings, and there are sex work collectives where they need health protection, they need the right to vote, various other rights, also the rights of transgenders within this community. It's a very important debate that's happening today. But at the other level, there are groups who think all sex work is bad and all sex workers are trafficked women. Nobody enters the trade out of their own will. And once they are put into sex work, there's very little avenue for them to get out of it. Whatever schemes that are offered are much far dissatisfactory, like making puppets or something else. Women are not inclined to do this. So there is this whole debate whether anybody enters the sex trade voluntarily, what kind of restrictions and preventions should be there, how do we treat sex workers. These are debates that are going on. We have a law on this also, 1988 prevention after that amendment again. And we also have this law coming up for age of marriage. The government wants to increase the age of marriage to 21. And there are many groups opposing it because it will harm a lot of poor and marginalized communities. I'm one of them who's opposing this. And also we have young girls getting pregnant at the age of 15, 16, 17, etc. And against their parental will. And today they're staying in shelter homes, but they would have to stay there till they're 21. So it's going to harm them. But there are a lot of people supporting it, saying that it will increase educational opportunities for women who will be able to argue against the marriage at the age of 18. So there are both ways and ways. So these are some current debates. So your question, if there's a question.
Yeah. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you so much for clearing our doubts and queries. Here, due to this lack of time, right now we are going to end the question and answer round. Now I request Nimisha to continue the session.
Thank you, Veena. Yes. Yes, now, as we all know, we will be having a valedictory session of this whole series of webinars. So I just wish to, say heartfelt thank you to Flavia ma'am for joining us. And I wish a lot of things need to be learned from you, ma'am, because there is so much to learn. You have actually worked on the field. You have worked with the people from different spheres of society. So our students will be benefited. It will be an inspiring experience for them also. So we would be really happy to have different types of interactions with you in another ways. Now shall we begin with the valedictory session, Asha ma'am?
I don't think Rode madam has joined yet.
So,
I've just messaged her.
Yes, she joined.
Madam has joined? Okay, fine.
Yes.
Okay.
So we shall begin with the valedictory session now.
Yeah, Madam
Okay.
is joining.
Yes, yes. We'll begin with the session now, valedictory session
Yeah.
now. I would just sum it up the previous session. Thank you, Dr. Veena, for conducting the question answer session. Truly, the kind of questions and the number of questions which were asked indicate how useful and informative the session was. IQAC and Women's Development Cell extend deep gratitude for accepting our invitation as a resource person, Flavia ma'am, on this International Women's Day. And in spite of having an extremely busy schedule, you joined. Thank you, ma'am. And I request all the participants to fill up the feedback link for receiving e-certificates. And let us move ahead with our another session, which is an equally important session to sum up this interesting journey of exploration of Indian feminism through the ages. We begin with the valedictory session now. I welcome the chief guest for the valedictory session, Professor Sonali Rode, madam. Welcome, ma'am. She is the Joint Director of Higher Education of Mumbai region. And once again, I welcome the participants. As per the university norms, we begin the valedictory session with the national anthem, followed by the university song of Ascendity Women's University. So I request all the participants to kindly raise for the national anthem and university song. And I request Ms. Hashmat Khan to play the national anthem and university song. I request everybody to please remain stand for the university song. Please raise for the university song.
परिवार
A series
Nimisha,
of
who is
webinars.
going to-
Yes, ma'am. Yes. A series of webinars on the interesting theme Indian feminism through the ages was quite enlightening journey for all the members who were associated with this series in some or the other way. I request our dear principal, Dr. Asha Menon ma'am, to address the participants, and I would like to mention that having responsibilities at multiple levels, Madam was deeply involved in all the activities planned by Women's Development Cell. Madam, kindly address the participants and please offer welcome address of the valedictory session.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nimisha Kamble. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the valedictory function of the webinar series on Indian feminism through the ages, organized by IQAC and Women's Development Cell of Srimati P. N. Doshi Women's College, Mumbai, which is affiliated to SNDT Women's University, Mumbai. I'm reminded of a quote by Ashley Judd, who is an actor and UNFPA Goodwill Ambassador. If you invest in girls and women, the world and all of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals will advance forward rapidly as a result. Yes, women are a great source of infinite power and strength. While one woman can create a story, millions coming together will create history. I strongly believe that collective consciousness is very effective and can bring about a change as compared to an individual's thought. Women are the foundation on whose back a progressive society thrives. Each woman is a force of power, ideas, dedication, brilliance, and winning charisma. We believe each woman is a source of potential which can change the world for good. No country has yet achieved full gender equality, and women across the world continue to suffer from discrimination and unequal rights and opportunities. We all know the situation is worst in countries where harmful patriarchal traditions, including child marriage and female genital mutilation, remain the norm. Globally, 1 in 4 girls does not attend secondary school, and 1 in 5 girls is married before her 18th birthday. Looking into all these aspects, we thought of having this series of 8 webinars, which would give the participants a bird's eye view about the various aspects of Indian feminism through the ages. With Break a Bias as its theme in this International Women's Day, it gives us the perfect opportunity to celebrate women at workplace. Complete the charges that women leaders create and encourage more women to realize their potentials and reap success. I'm extremely happy to welcome Professor Sonali Rode Madam, Joint Director, Higher Education, Mumbai Region, for this valedictory program. We couldn't have found a more empowered person than like you, Madam, for this program. Thank you so much for taking time for us, and we are extremely delighted to have you in our midst. Sorry.
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
would also like to welcome the participants who have been with us for all the 8 episodes of this webinar. Our strength was your participation, and that motivated us to take up this challenge. I congratulate the IQAC coordinator, Mr. Raju Chauhan, and Dr. Rekha Randive, in charge Women's Development Cell, and their team for organizing this webinar series. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your inspiring words. And your motivating words always give us inspiration to organize many more programs. Okay, as it was stated earlier, that this series of webinars on Indian feminism through the ages was a memorable experience for each and every member who was directly or indirectly associated with this series. Now I request in charge of Women's Development Cell and Vice Principal of Home Science Faculty, Dr. Rekha Randive ma'am, to give an overview of the series of webinars on the topic Indian Feminism Through the Ages, which was organized by Internal Quality Assurance Cell and Women's Development Cell of Srimati P. N. Doshi Women's College. I request Ms. Ashmat Khan to please do the screen sharing. Over to you, Rekha ma'am.
Thank you, Nimisha. Thank you, Nimisha.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to begin with the various webinars which we had. To begin with, patriarchy is intensely rooted in India. However, there have always been voices of women resisting compliances to their subversion. To explore the journey of such inspiring women, a series of webinars on the theme Indian Feminism Through the Ages was organized by IQAC and Women's Development Cell of Srimati P. N. Doshi Women's College. It's a fascinating journey of feminism through the ages in India by inviting resource persons on various topics related to the vast area of Indian feminism in different phases. This series of webinar was an attempt to explore a fascinating journey of feminism through the ages in India. It reflected on a movement where women have been searching for alternative images, questioning the sexually defined roles. First event was the inauguration and series of webinars on Indian feminism through the ages, which was on 23rd December 2021. The timing was at 11 a.m. and obviously the location was an online Zoom platform for all the webinars. The chief guest inaugurated the webinar. The chief guest, Honorable Vice Chancellor of SNDT Women's University, Professor Ujjwala Chakradev, inaugurated the webinar. At the outset, she congratulated IPSC and Women's Development Cell of the college for organizing webinar series on such a intricate and thought-provoking theme, that is Indian feminism through the ages. She emphasized that for women empowerment in India, we should adhere to the Indian values and the Indian system should be adopted, and blind imitation of Western systems should be avoided. This will enable all of us to achieve Maharishi Karve's dream of education and empowerment of women. She also emphasized significance of education by stating that it is a very powerful tool to bring women empowerment in India. On the same day of inauguration, the first webinar took place, and the topic of the webinar was Her Story of Feminism. And we had a very eminent speaker, Professor Vibhuti Patel, an expert in the area of women's studies, began her keynote address on the topic. As I said, her story of feminism by elaborating origin of feminism concerns in India. She explained her story by giving examples, glorious history of feminist contribution in India. The word her story is derived from the word history, which is commonly used in mainstream while understanding feminism against anti-discrimination. Webinar 2, the topic of the webinar was Expressions of Feminism in Therigatha, Poems by Buddhist Nun. And the event was organized on 10th January 2021 at 11 a.m. Dr. Uma Chakravarti is an Indian historian and a filmmaker. Beginning in the 1980s, Chakravarti wrote extensively on Indian history, highlighting issues related to gender, caste, class, publishing seven books over the course of her career. Her body of work mostly focused on the history of Buddhism and that of ancient and 19th century India. Dr. Uma Chakravarti stated that past is a complex heritage. Stories in Therigatha are inspiring and they provide ethical perspective. Through Therigatha, an attempt was made to write a different history of ordinary people. She expressed the difficulties to study history from women's perspective. The third webinar was on February 9th, and the topic was Indian Feminism Through Women's Movement Songs. The resource person for the same was Dr. Lata Pratibha Madhukar. By giving examples of women movement songs written and recited in different languages, which created awareness, sense of liberation, and a tool to expression The suppressed feelings and ideas of women was presented by the speaker in a very interesting manner. Webinar 4, which was on 16th February, the topic was In Search of Our Past, Roots of Feminist Consciousness Among the Women in Bhakti Movement. And the resource person for the same was Dr. Anagha Tambe. Dr. Anagha Tambe talked about widespread Bhakti movement which started in various parts of our country. She highlighted how people from different castes and sects contributed to democratizing it and how religious saints like Janabai, Bahinabai, etc. contributed for this movement. Mrs. Anagha also covered social and political spheres, and it was a path towards liberation, and it was quite challenging in its initial days. And it was also creating huge impact on lives of ordinary people. It transformed the dominant social order. Next was webinar 5, which was held on 19th February 2022. The topic was Sri Purush Tulna, Life and Times of a Feminist Text. The resource person for the same was Dr. Sneha Gode. She presented the reality of 19th century women with reference to the book Sri Purush Tulna by Tarabai Shinde, who protested against upper caste patriarchy and the caste system in India. It raises questions of child marriage, sati education for women, widow remarriage, etc. She stated that social reforms is unmitigated, unlinear spaces for progress of women in which women emerged as symbols of tradition. She used sophisticated tools of literary criticism such as sarcasm, irony to present her views to make it acceptable to people around her. Webinar 6, which was held on February 22nd, 2022, and the topic was Ishmael Chuktai's Feminist Perspective on Literature and Activism. The resource person for the same was Dr. Arvinder Ansari. Ishmael Chuktai, in her promising writing, expressed the indomitable spirit and fierce feminist ideology and rebellious themes. She talked about space, sexuality, and silence through her work, which brought about attitudinal change in the literary work. Her blunt and deliberate feminist ideology made her one of the successful and controversial writers of her time. Her writings are relevant till today. She currently captured the oppression and domination, restriction experienced by women covertly through her writings. Webinar 7, topic was Public Spaces and a Politics of Gendered Visibility in 21st Century India. The event was organized on 28 February 2022, and the resource person was Dr. Shilpa Phadke. Shilpa Phadke explained the topic by giving various examples which were of various protests and effective visuals. In her inspiring address, she spoke about feminism, gender equality, public violence, and private violence, etc. She gave reference of various acts by explaining visibility of women in the protest from different spheres. She highlighted reflection on feminist engagements with public spaces, feminist claims to public spaces, which includes transformation in the feminist discourse on public spaces. She interacted with the audience about her book, Why Loiter, which raises the question of how public spaces play an important role in women's commute, why women have to justify their presence in public spaces, and why loitering could be the revolution we need. Webinar 8, that is today's webinar. The topic was Women's Rights and Legal Advocacy in India, and the resource person for the same was Ms. Flavia Agnes. Advocate Flavia Agnes has praised the development of reforms in the rape cases by quoting different incidents which were instrumental in bringing reforms. She also provided insights into different aspects of rights of women in workplace. She highlighted the problems of domestic violence and the law to protect women also. She also emphasized that women have to be aware of their rights and seek justice when their rights are violated. Thank you, madam, for this thought-provoking session which we had today. Thank you all for your participation in the webinar series of Indian Feminism Through the Ages. Happy Women's Day, and over to Nimisha.
Thank you, Rekha madam. Indeed, an extensive and enlightening and quite memorable journey it was. To be a part of this organizing process of the series was quite learning experience for all of us. As we all know, this series of webinars was inaugurated by the chief guest, Honorable Vice Chancellor of SNDT Women's University, Professor Ujjwala Chakraday. Madam Vice Chancellor motivated the participants with an insightful address during the inauguration of the series. For the Validity Session on this International Women's Day, we have equally powerful personality who has joined us as the chief guest, Professor Sonali Rode, who is Joint Director of Higher Education of Mumbai region. I request Dr. Madhumita Bandopadhyay to introduce the chief guest of the Validity Session. Over to you, Madhumita ma'am.
Thank you so much, Nimisha. It is my proud privilege to introduce our guest today, Professor Sonali Rode. So today we are really very, very fortunate, as Principal Ma'am has said, to have amidst us one of the most empowered women on the occasion of International Women's Day, Professor Sonali Rode. She is a rare combination, an academician as well as an administrator. In fact, I feel she's an example for all of us to emulate. She has received the honorary D.Litt from California University. A professor in English, she has 20 years of teaching experience. She's very active even now. She's a PhD guide. 7 of her students have already been awarded with PhD and 7 students are working under her presently. 13 students have been awarded MPhil under her and 3 are still working under her. She has published 4 books and she has published 35 research papers in different national and international journals. She has written 4 chapters in books and presented papers in 23 national and international conferences. I wonder, ma'am, how could you get so much of time to do so much? It's really hats off to you. Besides this, she has received 4 international and national awards. She's a member of the BOS Syllabus Committee of SGBAU Amravati University and Mumbai University. She has other extracurricular activities like she's the director of the Pre-IAS Training Center, Kolhapur. And as we all know, she's presently the Joint Director of Higher Education in the Mumbai region. We all welcome you, ma'am, to our college on this occasion of International Women's Day. Welcome, ma'am. Welcome.
Truly remarkable, as Madhumita ma'am has said. Ma'am is a wonderful blend of academics and administration. So we are really fortunate to have you here, ma'am, with us today. So I request Professor Sonali Rode to please address the audience and please encourage us with your inspiring words. Over to you, Sonali ma'am.
Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon to all of you. And at the very outset, very happy International Women's Day to all the empowered women who are here as participants, as teachers, as principal or resource persons. We all are equally empowered and we all are equally fighting in this world together to create our identity. So happy Women's Day to all of you. And respected Asha Miman Madam, Principal of this P.N. Doshi College, IQAC Committee, and Women's Development Cell of the college, and all the participants. I really thank you all. Can you spare me a moment, Ajanta? If you don't mind, can I take a moment, please? It's
yes, ma'am. Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
सही तो करना लगी मेरी गड़बड़ी कोशिश है ना I'm very sorry. These are the last days when we can get our BDS and GPAs. Only 15th March only we can get them. So every time there is a hurry
I mean, every time there is somebody who is asking for a signature. So on this occasion of Women's Day, when I heard the journey of 8 webinars, actually this feminism was a part of my study of PhD thesis. I have done my PhD in psychoanalytical study of women's writings in English. I've included around 21 authors in it, and I have studied them, all the Indian writers, women writers especially. I've studied Shobha Deshpande, then I have gone through that Anita Desai, Kiran Desai is there, Mahashweta Devi was there, then Ismat Chuktai was there. So lots of experiences I have gone through when I read all those writers. There was one novel called Ek Hazar Khidkiyon Ki Haveli, or there is a novel, there is a I remember. I'm really very sorry for this little bit distractions. सूरज की अंतिम किरण से सूरज की पहली किरण तक. I feel that drama is, it itself tells us a lot about feminism. I won't take much of your time in describing feminism because you all know what feminism is. Everyone talks of feminism as a freedom of movement, of decision making, a freedom to choose a life partner, a freedom to choose what to wear, what not to wear, how to study, what to study. But I think feminism is something which will liberate a woman's mind, spirit, which will liberate a woman's mind, and which will make us, give us a free, safe space in society, so that she can equally travel along with a man. That is, according to me, or I feel that feminism is humanism itself. If you treat, if a man treats woman as a human being, as we call him a human being, if he calls us also a human being instead of a woman, then there won't be any kind of injustice, there won't be any oppression or suppression, there won't be any kind of social injustice or the incidents like Nirbhaya. So I feel that if we are treated instead of equally, humanly, we will definitely achieve gender equality, we will definitely achieve equality, and we will be able to live happily and safely in this world, in this society. As we all know, civilization began with a woman itself. It is woman who discovered how to, cultivate. She was the discoverer of that agriculture, and she was, as she discovered agriculture, it was a need to settle down at one place because she used to work hard in those farms. But when she carried a baby, she had to stop at home. And that is what is the beginning of this world-renowned sentence called Chul and Moon. As she was unable to do the hard work in the field when she was carrying a baby, she was supposed to work at home. And later on, she was stuck in home, and man started working it out. When he started, he was a bread earner, or he was a bread earner for the family, and woman became captive in the kitchen. But as days changes, as ages changes, when Britishers came, when they introduced education in our society, slowly Rajaram Mohan Roy, people like Mahatma Phule, Jyotiba Phule, Savitri Bai Phule, people like Dhondo Keshav Karve, they introduced education in the women, amongst the women also. And then there was an enlightenment, or there was an awareness of our own individuality, which began in Indian societies, women. Otherwise, they used to think that the family, the kitchen is their space. I have gone through one novel called Virginia Woolf's A Room of One's Own, where she says that kitchen is not my place. I need a room of my own where I can sit, where I can think, where I can do whatever I want to, and where I can think, say the things whatever I want to. So a room of one's own is another wonderful example of individuality. In Indian writings in English, in even in India, we have writers. There is one book called Saat Paule Akashi by Kapadia. She is a Gujarati writer. She has written in that novel very wonderfully how a liberated woman can live together, and how she can develop the whole society. When she is developed, the society can be developed. Or in Marathi we say जिच्या हाती पाळण्याची दोरी ती जगाला उधारी. Like as we all have well-known example of Rajmata Jizabai, who has given us the great king Shivaji Maharaj, who gave us Swaraj. So mothers like, or women like Jizabai, they all were already empowered. And I feel that as like them, we all are also empowered to create a generation. Being a teacher, every year we create a generation. We are here to develop a generation. And through our teachings and through our behavior or moral values, we can give these children these values like equality. There should be a gender equality. We can teach them how to treat a woman how as a human being. And I feel that being a teacher, even as a woman teacher, we are more empowered, and we have more challenges in front of us to create this whole generation who will be a generation that believing in women and treating them as a human being and making them their equal, not treating them as their subordinates. Like Simone de Beauvoir says, the other. Instead of the other, they will call her their own part or their equal part. And this is what I would like to say. With this words, I would like to conclude my address, as there are many things rushing. I won't take much of your time. And I would like to say, on this Women's Day, let us treat each other as a human being. Instead of calling us as a woman or a man, let us be a human being and create this human attitude towards each other. I thank you all once again for inviting me to this valedictory function. I'm really very sorry that I couldn't continue. There were certain disturbances. And once again, a very happy Women's Day to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Yes, thank you, madam. It was really insightful and quite inspiring address. I would like to say, Sonali ma'am, with reference to your address, that चूल आणि मूल सांभाळणं ही काही अवघड आहे भरपूर, पण आपल्यासारख्या सक्षम आणि सबल स्त्रिया आम्हाला प्रेरणा देत आहेत की आम्ही पण चूल आणि मूल सांभाळून आपलं अस्तित्व सिद्ध करू. तर धन्यवाद आपले. Thanks a lot, madam. And you have joined us in spite of having mammoth responsibilities and an extremely busy schedule. Your address was quite substantial, as it reflected deep understanding of society with your observations and your experiences, madam. Expressing gratitude is the least articulated and deepest of all emotions, but any event remains incomplete without expressing gratitude. So now I request Dr. Manjula Chheda to extend vote of thanks of the whole series of webinars on the topic, which was conducted on the topic Indian Feminism Through the Ages, which was organized by IQAC and Women's Development Cell. Over to you, Manjula ma'am.
Thank you, Nimisha. Thank you so much. Joint Director, Madam Professor Sonali Rode ma'am has correctly said that feminism is a humanism. I totally agree, ma'am, that the feminism is a humanism and we should celebrate as a Human Day, Humanism Day. So good afternoon to one and all present here. Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Sonali Rode Madam, Joint Director, Higher Education, Mumbai. Respected Principal Madam and all the participants. It is such an honor for me to get the opportunity to thank you all, dignitaries, On behalf of the IQSC and Women's Development Cell of Srimati P.N. Doshi Women's College, I would like to express my gratitude to all the esteemed delegates of the webinar for their presence and contribution to make this series of webinars on the theme Indian Feminism Through the Ages a Great Success. I extend my gratitude to our Honorable Chief Guest, Professor Sonali Rode Madam, to take out time from her busy schedule to grace the occasion. Thank you for inspiring and encouraging us with your words on this special day, Madam. Special thanks to Professor Vibhuti Patel Madam, Principal Dr. Asha Madam, and Vice Principal Dr. Rekha Randive Madam, and entire team for providing immense support to make the webinar successful. I must thank our Director Madam Dr. S. Kumudavali and our Managing Trustees for their motivation and support. A special thanks to the organizing team, volunteers for working hard for the past few months to make this series of webinars successful. A very big thanks to all the teaching and non-teaching staff for their support and coordination. In the end, I wish you all a very happy Women's Day and a Human Day. And once again, thank you all. Over to Nimisha.
Thank you, Manju. Really, vote of thanks sometimes become monotonous, but you made it interesting, Manju. So thank you for that. And thank you all the participants from bottom of my heart, being a member of Women's Development Cell. Thank you for joining and making our series of webinars successful event. So we will meet with another event next time. Equally interesting. We can stop the live streaming, Ashmat.